Stop! Don't step forward. The cry cut through the noise of Midtown Manhattan like a bell ringing in the middle of a storm. For one impossible second, it seemed louder than the engines, louder than the impatient horns, louder than the endless river of people pouring through the crosswalk beneath the towering glass buildings. Heads turned. Conversations stopped. A flock of pigeons burst into the air. And in the center of it all stood 8-year-old Maya Brooks, her small hand reaching forward with every ounce of courage she possessed. The afternoon sun reflected off windows 100 feet above the avenue, scattering golden light across the crowded street. Taxis crawled through traffic. Delivery trucks rumbled past. Office workers hurried along the sidewalks, clutching coffee cups and smartphones. No one expected anything unusual to happen on a Thursday afternoon. No one except Maya. She had noticed something everyone else had missed. A little boy stood alone near the edge of the crosswalk. He couldn't have been older than 7. His blonde hair moved gently in the wind. His attention was fixed on something across the street, something only he could see. The signal above the intersection still flashed its warning. The crowd remained waiting. Yet somehow the boy had drifted a few steps too far forward. Maya had seen him from nearly 30 feet away. She had been walking quickly with a paper pharmacy bag tucked safely inside her worn backpack. Her grandmother needed medicine before dinner. Missing the bus meant a long walk home, and long walks meant tired feet. Still, the moment she noticed the boy standing alone, something felt wrong. Not dangerous, not frightening, just wrong. The kind of feeling that settled quietly in the heart before the mind could explain it. She slowed her pace. The boy didn't seem to hear the sounds around him. He didn't seem to notice the movement of traffic or the warning signal overhead. He looked small against the giant city, small and alone. Then he took another step forward. Maya's heart jumped. Stop! Don't step forward, she shouted. Before she realized she was moving, her sneakers slapped against the pavement. The pharmacy bag bounced inside her backpack. Her braids swung behind her shoulders as she crossed the distance between them. The boy turned, startled by the voice. His eyes widened. Maya reached him just as the signal changed and a wave of motion swept through the intersection. She gently grabbed his arm and guided him backward toward the safety of the waiting crowd. The entire moment lasted only seconds. Seconds that disappeared almost as quickly as they arrived. Yet something about those seconds seemed to freeze the city itself. People stared. Drivers glanced through windshields. A woman carrying shopping bags covered her mouth. An older man lowered his newspaper. Nobody seemed quite sure what they had witnessed. Maya released the boy's arm. Her chest rose and fell rapidly from the sudden burst of energy. "Are you okay?" she asked. The boy blinked several times. "I think so," he answered softly. His voice sounded uncertain, as though he had just awakened from a dream. Maya smiled. "Good." That was all she said. No speech. No dramatic explanation. Just one simple word. Good. The signal finally changed. The crowd began moving again. Manhattan resumed its rhythm. But Maya noticed something lying near the curb. She bent down and picked it up carefully. It was a small yellow bracelet made of braided cord. Attached to it was a silver tag no larger than a quarter. Tiny letters were engraved on the surface. Maya brushed away a speck of dust with her thumb. "Is this yours?" she asked. The boy looked at the bracelet and immediately nodded. "My dad gave me that." Maya handed it back. Relief crossed the boy's face as he slipped it around his wrist again. He held it for a moment as though it were something precious. "Thanks," he said. "You're welcome." Before either child could say another word, a sharp voice echoed from across the street. "Noah!" The shout carried a mixture of fear and urgency powerful enough to cut through the city noise. Both children turned. A tall man in a dark suit was hurrying toward them from the opposite sidewalk. Several people moved aside as he approached. His polished shoes struck the pavement rapidly. His expression was unlike anything Maya had ever seen before. He looked frightened. Not angry. Not annoyed. Frightened. The man reached the corner and immediately dropped to one knee in front of the boy. "Noah, are you all right?" he asked. Noah nodded. "I'm okay, Dad." The man exhaled so deeply it seemed he had been holding his breath for miles. His shoulders relaxed. His eyes closed briefly. Then he looked toward Maya. The city continued moving around them. Screens flashed advertisements high above the avenue. Traffic lights changed colors. Sirens echoed somewhere in the distance. Yet for William Hartwell, billionaire entrepreneur, and one of the most recognizable business leaders in America, none of that mattered anymore. His attention remained fixed on the little girl standing quietly in front of him with a faded backpack and scuffed sneakers. Maya suddenly felt self-conscious. She glanced down at her shoes. One lace was beginning to fray. The sleeve of her sweatshirt had a small patch sewn near the elbow. She knew what wealthy people usually noticed first. But William Hartwell wasn't looking at her clothes. He wasn't looking at her backpack. He was looking at her eyes. And in those eyes, he saw something that shook him far more than anything discussed in a boardroom or written in a financial report. He saw kindness. Simple, immediate, instinctive kindness. The kind that asked for nothing in return. The kind that moved faster than fear. The kind that had just protected his son. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The noise of the city seemed distant now, almost muted. Then William's voice finally emerged, quiet and unsteady. "You helped him, didn't you?" Maya shifted her backpack slightly. "I just saw he was standing alone." William swallowed hard. Noah looked up at his father and smiled faintly. "She made sure I was okay." The billionaire's gaze returned to Maya. Around them, strangers continued watching. Some recognized him. Others recognized the significance of the moment, even if they didn't know his name. And as the afternoon sunlight painted the avenue gold, William Hartwell slowly stood, realizing that a little girl he had never met had just changed something far more important than his day. She had changed his heart. William Hartwell remained silent for several seconds. The noise of Manhattan flowed around them once again, but Maya could tell something had changed. The expression on his face no longer belonged to a man thinking about schedules, meetings, or stock prices. It belonged to a father who had just realized how close he had come to losing an ordinary moment with his son. Noah stood beside Maya, absent-mindedly turning the yellow bracelet around his wrist. The silver tag caught the afternoon sunlight each time it moved. William finally cleared his throat. "Thank you," he said quietly. Maya shrugged. Anyone would have done it. A few people nearby exchanged glances. An older woman standing at the corner softly shook her head. "No, sweetheart," she said. "Not everyone would have." Maya looked down at her shoes. Compliments always made her uncomfortable. She had only done what felt right. Nothing more. Nothing less. William noticed the worn backpack hanging from her shoulders. He noticed how tightly she held one strap. He noticed the pharmacy logo printed on the small paper bag partially visible inside the unzipped pocket. "Were you heading somewhere?" he asked. Maya nodded immediately. "My grandmother needs her medicine." She glanced toward the avenue. "Actually, I am running late." Noah looked disappointed. "You are leaving already?" Maya smiled. "I have to." The boy hesitated. "Can I know your name first?" "Maya, I am Noah." "I know," she said with a grin, pointing at the bracelet. Noah laughed for the first time since his father arrived. The sound seemed to surprise William. It had been a while since he had heard his son laugh so easily. Most days Noah spent his afternoons with tutors, staff members, and carefully organized schedules. Everything in his life was planned, structured, managed. Yet somehow this girl he had known for less than 10 minutes had made him smile more than anyone else that week. William reached into his jacket pocket and removed a business card. "Maya, if there is ever anything I can do for you or your family, please call me." Maya stared at the card but did not take it immediately. "Why?" William blinked. Few people ever asked him that question. "Because I would like to help. My grandma says help should not come with strings attached." William looked genuinely surprised. Then he smiled. "Your grandmother sounds wise." "She is." After a moment, Maya accepted the card and carefully slipped it into her backpack. She had no idea who William Hartwell really was. His face seemed vaguely familiar, but she did not follow business news or financial magazines. To her, he was simply Noah's father. Nothing more. Nothing less. Across the street, a traffic officer who had witnessed the incident approached. "Excuse me," he said. "I reviewed the intersection camera because several people reported what happened." William turned toward him. The officer smiled warmly at Maya. "The footage confirms exactly what everyone saw. This young lady noticed the situation before anybody else did." Several nearby pedestrians nodded. One man even applauded softly. Maya's cheeks immediately turned warm. She wished everyone would stop looking at her. The officer continued. Most people were focused on their phones or trying to get somewhere. She was paying attention. William looked at Maya again. Those words stayed with him. She was paying attention. Such a simple statement. Yet it carried an uncomfortable truth. He spent millions of dollars every year gathering information, analyzing data, predicting trends, and solving problems. But somehow this little girl had seen something important that hundreds of adults had overlooked. Because she was paying attention, Noah suddenly tugged on his father's sleeve. "Dad, yes. Can Maya come have ice cream with us?" William almost laughed. The request was so immediate and sincere. Maya shook her head before he could answer. "I really have to get home." Noah looked disappointed again. Oh, then an idea crossed Maya's mind. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a small notebook with a bent corner. Tearing off a piece of paper, she quickly wrote something down. "Here." Noah accepted it. "What is it?" "A joke. A joke. For when you feel sad." Noah unfolded the paper. His eyes scanned the words before a smile spread across his face. "That is terrible." Maya grinned. No." Even William laughed. The tension that had surrounded the intersection only minutes earlier had completely disappeared. The city no longer felt cold and rushed. For a brief moment, it felt small enough for strangers to become friends. Maya adjusted her backpack once more and stepped backward toward the sidewalk. "I should go now." Noah carefully folded the note and placed it inside his pocket. "Will I see you again?" Maya thought for a moment. "Maybe." Then she turned and started walking north along the avenue. Her braids bounced gently with each step. The afternoon sunlight painted long shadows across the sidewalk. William and Noah watched her disappear into the crowd. Neither spoke for several seconds. Finally, Noah looked up. "Dad, yes. She is different." William nodded slowly. "She is." What neither of them knew was that the small encounter at that busy intersection was far from over. Because tucked safely inside Maya's backpack was a business card she did not recognize. And tucked safely inside Noah's pocket was a simple joke written by a girl whose kindness had already begun changing far more lives than she could possibly imagine. By the time Maya reached the small brick apartment building on West 135th Street, the sky had begun to soften into the pale orange of early evening. Her feet ached from walking more than 20 blocks, and the pharmacy bag inside her backpack made a faint crinkling sound every time she climbed another stair. The elevator had been out for 3 days, so she counted the steps the way her grandmother had taught her, not because counting made the climb shorter, but because it made hard things feel organized. 24 steps to the second floor, 24 more to the third. By the time she reached apartment 4B, she was breathing through her mouth and smiling anyway. "Grandma, I am home," she called as she opened the door. The apartment was small but warm, filled with the smell of peppermint tea, old books, and the lemon soap her grandmother used on Sundays. A lamp glowed beside the couch, casting soft yellow light across crocheted blankets and framed photographs on the wall. Evelyn Brooks sat near the window in her blue house robe, her silver hair wrapped neatly beneath a scarf. She looked up from her crossword puzzle and narrowed her eyes the way she always did when she could tell Maya was hiding a story. "You are late, baby." Maya slipped off her backpack. "I know. The bus. Missed it." Evelyn reached for the medicine bag, then paused. "And why did you miss it?" Maya handed her the prescription bottle first, hoping responsibility might distract her from curiosity. It did not. Evelyn took the medicine, placed it gently on the side table, and waited. Maya lowered herself onto the chair across from her grandmother. The room hummed softly with the radiator. Outside, a siren passed somewhere far away, fading into the evening traffic. "There was a boy," Maya said. Evelyn's expression changed immediately, not with fear, but with focus. "What kind of boy?" "A little boy. My age, maybe younger. He was standing too close to the street by 42nd and Madison. I told him to stop." Evelyn leaned forward. "Did something happen?" Maya shook her head quickly. "No. He is okay. I just helped him step back." She said it simply, as though helping a child at a busy Manhattan intersection was no more unusual than holding a door open. But Evelyn knew her granddaughter. She knew the difference between a small day and a day that had left fingerprints on the soul. And his family? His dad came. Maya reached into her backpack and pulled out the business card William had given her. "He gave me this." Evelyn put on her reading glasses, took the card, and held it under the lamp. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "William Hartwell." Maya leaned forward. "Do you know him?" "I know of him." "Is he famous?" Evelyn looked at the card for another moment. The letters were embossed in dark blue ink. "Hartwell Global Foundation. Private office. A phone number. An address on Park Avenue. In a certain kind of world, yes. Maya frowned. He just seemed like Noah's dad. Evelyn smiled at that. That is probably the truest thing about him. Maya watched her grandmother place the card carefully beside the lamp. He asked if he could help us. And what did you say? I told him help should not come with strings attached. Evelyn laughed softly, then covered her mouth as if trying not to cough. That sounds like something I would say. Because you did. The two of them smiled, and for a few peaceful minutes the apartment felt like a safe little island above the noise of the city. Maya made tea the way Evelyn liked it, 1 spoon of honey and no milk. She checked the stove, folded the blanket, and placed the medicine bottle beside a glass of water. She was only 8, but she moved around the room with the quiet confidence of someone who had learned early that love was often made of small chores. Later, while Evelyn rested, Maya sat on the rug near the coffee table and opened her school notebook. She tried to finish her math worksheet, but her eyes kept drifting toward the business card. William Hartwell. Noah. The yellow bracelet. The way the billionaire had looked at her after the officer said she was the only one paying attention. She wondered what it felt like to live in a home where people printed your name on cards and cars waited for you at curbs. She wondered if Noah had someone to sit with him at dinner. She wondered why he had seemed so alone in a crowd that big. Across town, in a glass penthouse high above Central Park, Noah Hartwell sat at a long dining table, turning a folded piece of notebook paper between his fingers. The joke Maya had written was still there, creased but safe. William watched him from the opposite end of the table. Between them sat untouched plates, polished silverware, and a silence too expensive to admit it was lonely. What did she write? William asked gently. Noah looked up. Why did the bicycle fall over? William paused. Why? Because it was too tired. Noah smiled before he finished saying it. William smiled too, but something in his chest tightened. It was a silly joke. A child's joke. Yet his son held it like a gift. The realization settled over him slowly. Noah had not needed another private tutor, another device, another weekend activity planned by assistants. He had needed someone to notice when he was standing alone. William looked out at the city lights flickering beyond the windows. Somewhere down there, Maya Brooks was finishing homework in a small apartment after doing something no adult in that crowd had done fast enough. He picked up his phone, then stopped before dialing. He did not want to intrude. He did not want to turn gratitude into pressure. Instead, he opened a blank note and typed 4 words he could not shake from his mind. No child stands alone. The next morning arrived wrapped in a soft gray drizzle that painted the city streets silver. Maya woke before her alarm, as she usually did, and quietly prepared breakfast while Evelyn slept. The tiny apartment was still dark except for the glow from the kitchen light. Pancakes were beyond her skill level, but toast and scrambled eggs were not. By 7 o'clock, the scent of warm bread drifted through the apartment. Evelyn emerged from her bedroom smiling. You are getting too good at this, she said. Maya grinned. That is because somebody has to keep you alive. Evelyn laughed and pointed toward the table. Then sit down and help me eat. For a little while, everything felt ordinary again. School papers covered one end of the table. Rain tapped gently against the window. The business card remained beside the lamp where Evelyn had left it. Maya barely noticed it anymore. To her, yesterday already felt like something that belonged to another world. Across Manhattan, however, William Hartwell could not stop thinking about it. He sat inside a conference room on the 38th floor of Hartwell Global Headquarters. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. Around him, executives discussed quarterly forecasts, expansion plans, and investment reports. Charts appeared on giant screens. Numbers filled the room. Yet William's attention kept drifting. His notebook sat open in front of him. Instead of financial projections, 4 words stared back from the page. No child stands alone. His assistant Grace Miller noticed his distraction almost immediately. She had worked with him for nearly 12 years and could read his moods better than most people. Something on your mind? She asked quietly during a break. William looked out the window. Yesterday, I met a little girl. Grace smiled. That is not usually how your stories begin. This one should. He told her everything. The crowded intersection. Noah standing alone. Maya noticing what everyone else missed. The yellow bracelet. The joke. The apartment address printed on the pharmacy receipt he had accidentally glimpsed when she opened her backpack. Grace listened without interrupting. By the time he finished, even she looked thoughtful. Sounds like an extraordinary child, she said. William nodded slowly. That is exactly what worries me. Why? Because children like that spend their lives helping everyone else. Sometimes nobody notices when they need help too. Grace folded her hands. And you want to do something? William leaned back in his chair. I just do not know what. Meanwhile, at school, Maya sat near the window of her fourth-grade classroom. Rain traced patterns across the glass. Her teacher was explaining fractions, but Maya's mind drifted elsewhere. She kept thinking about Noah. Not because he was rich, not because his father was important, simply because he had looked lonely. She remembered the way he held the joke she wrote as though it mattered. Most children laughed at her jokes and forgot them 5 minutes later. Noah had folded the paper carefully and slipped it into his pocket. The memory stayed with her throughout the day. When the final bell rang, Maya gathered her books and headed outside. Clouds still covered the city, though the rain had stopped. She was halfway down the block when a familiar black SUV rolled quietly to the curb. Maya froze. The rear window lowered. Grace Miller smiled warmly from inside. Maya Brooks. Maya stepped back slightly. Yes. Grace immediately noticed the caution in her eyes and kept her voice gentle. Do not worry. You are not in trouble. Maya looked at the SUV, then at Grace, then back toward the school entrance. How do you know my name? Mr. Hartwell asked me to find you. Maya frowned. Why? Grace opened the passenger door and stepped onto the sidewalk. She remained several feet away, careful not to crowd her. Because someone wants to thank you properly. Maya shifted her backpack. He already thanked me. Grace smiled. That is exactly what he said you would say. For a moment, neither spoke. Students walked past them. Teachers crossed the parking lot. The city continued moving around them. Finally, Grace reached into her purse and produced a sealed envelope. Then perhaps you can simply take this home and discuss it with your grandmother. Maya accepted the envelope cautiously. What is it? An invitation. To what? Grace's smile widened. Lunch. Maya blinked. Lunch. With Noah. The answer caught her completely off guard. Grace could see it on her face. Maya looked down at the envelope, then up again. That is all. That is all. Grace paused before adding, sometimes people do not need money. Sometimes they just need a friend. Maya stared at the envelope for several seconds. Then, slowly, she smiled. Because for the first time since the crowded intersection, she realized she had not been the only one paying attention. That evening, Maya placed the envelope on the kitchen table as though it might make a sound if she opened it too quickly. Evelyn Brooks sat across from her, glasses low on her nose, studying her granddaughter with the calm patience of someone who had survived enough years to know that surprises should be handled gently. The apartment smelled like chicken soup and rainwater drifting in from the cracked window. Outside, tires whispered along the wet street below. Maya tapped one finger against the envelope. She said it is just lunch. Evelyn lifted an eyebrow. People with drivers in black sport utility vehicles rarely do anything that is just lunch. Grandma, I am not saying no, baby. I am saying we read first. Maya slid the envelope across the table. Evelyn opened it carefully with a butter knife because she believed paper deserved respect, even when it came from billionaires. Inside was a simple cream-colored note, handwritten in dark blue ink. Dear Miss Brooks and Miss Evelyn Brooks, Noah would be honored if Maya could join us for lunch this Saturday at the Central Park Boathouse. Grace Miller will coordinate transportation only if you are comfortable. No pressure, no cameras, no publicity, just lunch. With gratitude, William Hartwell. Evelyn read the note. Twice. Maya watched her face, trying to guess the verdict before it came. No cameras, Evelyn said softly. That part matters. Maya leaned forward. So can I go? Evelyn removed her glasses and folded them. We can go. Maya blinked. We? Yes, we. You are 8 years old, and I did not raise you to climb into wealthy people's plans without your grandmother sitting beside you asking questions. Maya tried not to smile, but failed. You are going to scare him. Good, Evelyn said. Then he will behave. Saturday arrived bright and cold, with the kind of blue sky that made Manhattan look freshly washed. Grace arrived at 10:30 in the morning, not in the black sport utility vehicle this time, but in a regular town car without tinted windows. Evelyn noticed that immediately. So did Maya. Grace stepped out with a polite smile, wearing a navy coat and carrying herself with careful warmth. Good morning, Miss Brooks. Miss Evelyn Brooks. Evelyn nodded. Good morning. I appreciate that you came yourself. Mr. Hartwell insisted. Did he? Grace smiled. He said Maya would trust you more if she saw a familiar face. Evelyn glanced at Maya. At least he is learning. The ride downtown felt almost unreal. Maya sat beside Evelyn, watching Harlem shift into the Upper West Side, then into the green edges of Central Park. Horse carriages rolled along the curb. Joggers passed in bright jackets. Families pushed strollers beneath bare branches that glittered with last night's rain. Maya pressed her fingers lightly against the window, not because she had never seen Central Park, but because today it seemed to be opening like the first page of a book. At the restaurant, William Hartwell was already waiting outside instead of at a private table. That surprised Evelyn too. He wore a charcoal coat and no tie. Noah stood beside him, holding the yellow bracelet on his wrist with one hand and a small paper bag with the other. The moment he saw Maya, his face brightened. You came. Maya stepped out of the car. My grandma said we could. Noah looked at Evelyn with sudden seriousness. Thank you, ma'am. Evelyn's expression softened despite herself. You are welcome, young man. William approached slowly, offering his hand to Evelyn first. Miss Brooks, thank you for allowing this. Evelyn shook his hand, firm and brief. I allowed lunch. Nothing more mysterious than that. William nodded. That is exactly what this is. They walked inside together. The restaurant overlooked the lake, where the water moved in small silver ripples beneath the winter light. The table William had chosen was near a window, open and visible, not hidden away. Maya noticed that. Evelyn noticed it too. A server brought hot chocolate for the children and tea for Evelyn. William waited until everyone was seated before speaking. Maya, Noah has something for you. Noah pushed the small paper bag across the table. Maya opened it and found a pack of colored pencils and a notebook with a yellow cover. On the first page, in careful, uneven handwriting, Noah had written, "For more terrible jokes." Maya laughed. Not polite laughter. Real laughter, bright enough to make the adults at the table pause. This is perfect, she said. Noah smiled with relief. I was hoping you would like it. For the first time, their worlds did not feel separated by money, neighborhoods, or the long invisible lines adults drew across the city. They were simply two children sharing hot chocolate by a window while ducks drifted across a lake. William watched them quietly. Evelyn watched William. After a while, she spoke in a low voice. You look like a man carrying a question. William glanced at her. I suppose I am. Then ask it honestly. He looked toward Maya and Noah, then back at Evelyn. How do I thank a child without turning her kindness into a transaction? Evelyn studied him for a long moment. The clink of dishes and soft restaurant music filled the space between them. You start by not making her feel purchased, she said. Then you ask what is needed, not what makes you feel generous. William lowered his eyes, and for once, the billionaire had no quick answer. Across the table, Maya opened the yellow notebook and wrote a new joke while Noah waited eagerly beside her. The silver tag on his bracelet flashed in the sunlight, and William realized that gratitude was not a check to be written. It was a responsibility to be understood. By the time dessert arrived, the nervousness around the table had softened into something warmer. Maya and Noah had turned the yellow notebook into a private museum of terrible jokes, each one worse than the last. And every time Noah laughed, William looked as though he was hearing a sound he had almost forgotten. Evelyn noticed everything. She noticed how Noah leaned toward Maya when she spoke. She noticed how William set his phone face down and did not check it once. She noticed how Grace, seated nearby, but not intruding, watched the room with quiet approval. After lunch, they stepped outside into the clean winter air. Central Park shimmered beneath the pale sun. Children ran along the path in puffy coats. A man played saxophone near the lake, the notes floating gently above the sound of footsteps and distant traffic. Noah pointed toward a small stand near the walking path. Can we get roasted chestnuts? William looked at Evelyn first, as if remembering that permission was not his alone to give. Evelyn nodded. A small bag. Noah and Maya walked ahead with Grace close by, their voices rising and falling with excitement. William and Evelyn followed several yards behind. For a while, neither adult spoke. Then William said, I have been thinking about what you said inside. Evelyn kept her eyes on the children. That is a good start. You were right. I wanted to do something generous, but part of me wanted it to be simple. Write a check. Make a phone call. Fix the feeling. Evelyn gave him a sideways glance. Feelings do not get fixed that way, Mr. Hartwell. They get listened to. William nodded. I am beginning to understand that. Ahead of them, Maya accepted a warm paper bag of chestnuts from Noah and thanked the vendor with a bright smile. Noah immediately offered her the first one. She accepted it, blew on it carefully, and laughed when it was still too hot. It was such an ordinary moment that William felt its weight more deeply than anything grand. Together, shoulder to shoulder, but with space between them, watching ducks move slowly through the water. Evelyn sat on one end of the bench, resting her hands on the top of her cane. William remained standing for a moment, then sat beside her. May I ask you something? He said. You may ask. When Maya saw Noah yesterday, why do you think she stopped? Evelyn did not answer immediately. She watched Maya break a chestnut into 2 pieces and hand the larger half to Noah, without seeming to think about it. Because she knows what it feels like when adults walk past, Evelyn said at last. William turned toward her. The words were quiet, but they landed with force. She is cared for, Evelyn continued, before he could misunderstand. She is loved. But love does not make rent lower. It does not make medicine cheaper. It does not make elevators work. Maya has learned to notice things because noticing is how we get through the day. William looked toward the lake. Noah has people around him all the time. That is not the same as being seen. The sentence silenced him. He thought of the tutors, the drivers, the security team, the schedule blocks, the calendar reminders. He thought of birthdays shortened by calls, dinners interrupted by messages, bedtime stories delegated to screens. He had provided everything a boy could need except the one thing Noah had been silently asking for, his presence. Maya turned suddenly and waved the yellow notebook. Mr. Hartwell, Noah says he has a better joke than mine. William smiled. That sounds unlikely. Noah stood proudly. Why did the cookie go to the doctor? Maya groaned before the answer even came. Why? William asked. Because it felt crummy. Maya burst into laughter so sudden and honest that a couple walking nearby smiled too. Noah looked thrilled. William laughed with them, but his eyes shone with a feeling he did not try to hide. The moment was small. No headlines. No cameras. No grand speeches. Just a park bench, a paper bag of chestnuts, and 2 children teaching a powerful man the difference between attention and love. When the afternoon grew colder, Grace brought the car around. Maya helped Evelyn stand before. Anyone else could move. William noticed that too. At the curb, Noah hesitated. Will you come again? Maya hugged the yellow notebook to her chest. Maybe, if my grandma says yes. Evelyn looked at William. We will discuss it. Noah nodded, accepting the answer with more maturity than expected. Then he removed the yellow bracelet from his wrist and held it out to Maya. You can keep it until next time. Maya immediately shook her head. No, that is yours. I know. But then there has to be a next time. Maya stared at him, then at the bracelet resting in his open palm. Slowly, she accepted it. William felt his throat tighten. It was not the value of the bracelet that mattered. It was the trust. Maya slipped it carefully into the front pocket of her backpack. I will keep it safe, she said. Noah smiled. I know. As the town car pulled away, William stood on the curb with his son beside him. Noah watched until Maya and Evelyn disappeared into traffic. Then he reached for William's hand. Not because he was scared, not because someone told him to, simply because he wanted to. William held it gently, and for the first time in a long while, he did not feel like a man managing a life from a distance. He felt like a father standing exactly where he was supposed to be. The week that followed brought a quiet change neither Maya nor Noah fully understood. Some friendships begin with a conversation. Theirs seemed to begin with paying attention. Every afternoon after school, Maya opened the yellow notebook and filled another page with jokes, sketches, and observations from her day. Sometimes she drew pigeons wearing business suits. Sometimes she invented stories about ducks secretly running New York City. On Friday evening, Grace arrived with a small envelope containing a handwritten note from Noah. Inside were 3 terrible jokes and a drawing of a chestnut wearing sunglasses. Maya laughed so hard that Evelyn nearly dropped her teacup. What is so funny? Evelyn asked. Maya handed her the paper. Evelyn read it twice before smiling. These are terrible. I know. Then I suppose he is learning from you. Meanwhile, William Hartwell found himself making decisions differently. For years, His calendar had controlled every hour of every day. Now he began blocking time that could not be interrupted. Breakfast with Noah. A walk after school. Saturday mornings with no meetings. His executive team noticed immediately. Grace noticed first. "You declined 3 investor calls this week," she said one morning. William looked up from his desk. Did the company survive? Apparently. Then perhaps the calls were not as urgent as everyone thought. Grace smiled. Maya would probably approve. William leaned back in his chair. The mention of her name brought a thoughtful expression to his face. For days, he had been reflecting on Evelyn's words. Ask what is needed, not what makes you feel generous. The advice had settled into his mind like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples through everything he did. Later that afternoon, he asked Grace to help him research something. Not Maya, not Evelyn. Their privacy mattered too much. Instead, he requested information about after-school programs across Manhattan neighborhoods. Community centers, youth tutoring programs, safe walking initiatives for children, places where kids might be overlooked simply because adults were busy. The more reports he read, the more uncomfortable he became. There were thousands of children navigating challenges that had nothing to do with intelligence or character. They simply lacked support. They lacked attention. The realization stayed with him. Across town, Maya was experiencing a challenge of her own. Her school announced a citywide creative writing competition. The grand prize included a scholarship fund for educational materials and a recognition ceremony at the New York Public Library. Most students were excited. Maya was terrified. "You should enter," her teacher, Mrs. Ramirez, told her after class. Maya immediately shook her head. "No, why not? Because people who win those things write better than me." Mrs. Ramirez smiled gently. "That is not how contests work." "It feels like it." The teacher opened a folder from her desk. Inside were several assignments Maya had completed throughout the year. Stories about neighborhoods. Stories about grandparents. Stories about friendship. "Do you know what these have in common?" Mrs. Ramirez asked. Maya shrugged. "They all have spelling mistakes." Mrs. Ramirez laughed. "No, they all notice things." The phrase hit Maya unexpectedly. She had heard something similar before. The officer at the intersection. William. Her grandmother. People kept saying the same thing in different ways. You notice things. That evening, Maya sat by the apartment window while snowflakes drifted softly beyond the glass. The yellow bracelet Noah had loaned her rested beside the notebook. She turned it slowly between her fingers. The silver tag reflected the warm light from the lamp. NH. A reminder that one moment could change everything. Evelyn looked up from her crossword puzzle. "You are thinking too loudly." Maya smiled. "Is that possible?" "With you, yes." Maya stared out at the snow. "Mrs. Ramirez wants me to enter a writing competition." Evelyn waited. "And what if I lose?" Evelyn set down her pencil. "Baby, losing is not the question." "It is not." "No. The question is whether the story deserves to be told." Maya considered that carefully. The room grew quiet except for the ticking clock above the bookshelf. Finally, she reached for the notebook. "Maybe I already know what story I want to write." Evelyn smiled. "I had a feeling." Several miles away, Noah sat beside his bedroom window, watching the same snowfall. His father knocked gently before entering. "Can I come in?" Noah nodded. William sat beside him. For a moment, they watched the snow together. Then Noah asked a question that caught him off guard. "Dad." "Yes." "Do you think one person can change a lot of lives?" William thought about crowded intersections, about yellow bracelets, about chestnuts in Central Park, about a little girl who paid attention when nobody else did. He smiled softly. "I think it happens more often than people realize." Noah looked out at the falling snow and smiled. Neither of them knew that Maya's decision about the writing contest was about to create another unexpected turning point, one that would connect their lives in a way none of them could yet imagine. The following 2 weeks passed in. A blur of school assignments, snowfall, and yellow notebook pages. Every afternoon, Maya worked on her story for the writing competition at the small kitchen table while Evelyn read nearby. At first, the words came slowly. She erased sentences, rewrote paragraphs, crumpled sheets of paper, and missed wastebaskets by several feet. But gradually the story found its shape. It was not about money. It was not about famous people. It was not even about a crowded Manhattan intersection. It was about noticing, about the moments people missed when they hurried through life. Maya wrote about a lonely boy standing in a crowd. She wrote about a grandmother who taught her that kindness was a form of attention. She wrote about how the world sometimes changed because one person stopped walking long enough to see another human being. When she finally finished the last page, she carried it to Evelyn with nervous hands. "Can you read it?" Evelyn accepted the papers carefully. Of course. The apartment grew quiet except for the ticking clock. Maya sat on the edge of the couch, twisting the yellow bracelet between her fingers. Every few seconds, she glanced toward her grandmother. Evelyn's expression remained unreadable. She turned one page, then another, then another. Finally, she reached the end and removed her glasses. Maya immediately stood. "Well," Evelyn looked at her for several moments before speaking. "You wrote the truth." Maya blinked. "Is it good?" A smile spread across Evelyn's face. "The truth usually is." The story was submitted the next morning. After that, there was nothing to do except wait. Waiting, Maya discovered, was much harder than writing. Meanwhile, William Hartwell had quietly begun working on an idea that refused to leave him alone. The phrase "no child stands alone" had grown from a note in his phone into folders filled with plans. Community partnerships, school safety initiatives, mentorship programs, crosswalk volunteers near elementary schools. He spent evenings reviewing proposals instead of financial reports. Grace watched the transformation with growing amazement. One afternoon, she entered his office carrying a stack of documents. "You know most. Billionaires buy yachts during a midlife crisis." William glanced up. "I am buying crosswalk programs." "Apparently." He smiled. "Seems more useful." Across town, Noah was also changing. His teachers noticed it first. He volunteered answers more often, joined conversations, invited another student to sit beside him at lunch. The loneliness that had once surrounded him like an invisible wall had begun to crack. When his teacher asked what had changed, Noah simply shrugged. "I made a friend." Sometimes the biggest transformations arrived disguised as simple answers. Then, on a cold Thursday afternoon, Maya's classroom door opened during reading period. Mrs. Ramirez stepped inside holding a large white envelope. The room immediately grew curious. 20 pairs of eyes followed her as she crossed to Maya's desk. "Maya Brooks," she said gently. Maya's stomach dropped. For one terrifying second, she assumed she had forgotten an assignment. Then she saw the smile on her teacher's face. "Would you come with me?" The hallway seemed unusually bright as they walked toward the principal's office. Maya's heart beat so loudly she could barely hear anything else. Outside the office stood 3 adults she did not recognize, along with a photographer carrying a camera at his side. Not raised, not taking pictures, simply waiting. Mrs. Ramirez squeezed her shoulder. "Open the envelope." Maya carefully unfolded the letter. The words blurred at first because her hands were shaking. Then she read them again. "Congratulations. Your submission has been selected as the grand prize winner of the New York City Young Voices Creative Writing Competition." Maya stared at the page, then stared at it again. The principal laughed softly. "It means you won." Maya covered her mouth. "I won." "You won." Tears immediately filled her eyes. Not because of the scholarship funds. Not because of the recognition. Because someone had read her story. Someone had understood it. That evening, she rushed into the apartment carrying the letter. Evelyn had barely stood up before Maya threw her arms around her. "Grandma, I won." Evelyn held her tightly. "I know you did." "How?" Evelyn smiled. "Mrs. Ramirez called 20 minutes ago. I have been pretending not to know ever since." They laughed together until neither could speak. Later that night, another call arrived. Grace Miller's name appeared on Evelyn's phone. "Good evening," Grace said warmly. "I hope I am not interrupting." "Not at all," Evelyn replied. "We just heard the news." "So did we." A familiar voice entered the call. "William Hartwell. Tell Maya congratulations." Maya grabbed the phone immediately. "Thank you." "No," William said softly. "Thank you." Maya frowned. "For what?" There was a brief pause before he answered. "For reminding people to pay attention." As she stood by the window holding the phone, snow began falling outside once again, drifting through the glow of the streetlights. Maya watched the flakes swirl across the dark sky. She still did not realize that her award ceremony would soon bring together hundreds of people. She did not realize her story was about to reach far beyond her classroom. And she certainly did not realize that one particular sentence she had written would inspire a decision that would change countless lives throughout New York City. The morning of the award ceremony arrived bright and clear, the snow from earlier in the week melting into sparkling patches along the sidewalks of Manhattan. Maya stood in front of the apartment mirror while Evelyn adjusted the collar of her navy blue dress. The dress was not expensive. It did not come from a designer store, but it was pressed perfectly, and Evelyn treated it as though it belonged in a museum. "There," she said, stepping back. "Now you look like a young lady who has something important to say." Maya glanced at her reflection and smiled nervously. "What if I trip?" Evelyn laughed. "Then you stand up and keep going. That is what you always do." A few hours later, the grand reading room of the New York Public Library glowed beneath crystal chandeliers and warm afternoon light. Rows of chairs filled the space. Teachers, students, parents, journalists, and city officials quietly took their seats. Maya had never seen anything quite like it. The room felt enormous. The ceiling seemed as high as the sky itself. Yet what caught her attention most was a familiar face near the front row. Noah sat beside William Hartwell, waving enthusiastically the moment he spotted her. The yellow bracelet was no longer in his possession, but Maya carried it carefully inside her pocket. She waved back and felt some of her nervousness disappear. The ceremony began. Speeches were given. Awards were presented. Then came the moment Maya dreaded and hoped for at the same time. Her name was called. Applause filled the room as she walked toward the stage. For one second, she thought about the crowded intersection where everything had started. For another second, she thought about her grandmother counting apartment stairs. Then she stepped to the podium. The audience grew quiet. Maya unfolded a page from her story and began to read. Her voice was small at first, then stronger, then steady. She spoke about noticing people, about how loneliness often hides in plain sight, about how kindness is not always something big and dramatic. Sometimes it is simply choosing not to walk past. The room remained completely silent. Not because people were bored, because they were listening, truly listening. Near the front row, William felt every word settle into his heart. One sentence in particular seemed to stop time. No child should ever feel invisible in a city full of people. Maya read it clearly, without realizing the effect it would have. William lowered his eyes briefly. That single sentence was the same truth he had been struggling to put into words for weeks. When Maya finished, the applause rose slowly, then all at once. People stood. Teachers wiped away tears. Parents hugged their children. Maya looked toward Evelyn, who sat with her hands folded calmly despite the pride shining in her eyes. Then she looked toward Noah. He was applauding harder than anyone. After the ceremony ended, guests gathered for photographs and refreshments. Maya had barely stepped off the stage when Noah ran over. "You were amazing." Maya laughed. "I almost forgot half the speech." Nobody could tell. Before she could answer, William approached carrying a slim folder. Grace stood nearby, smiling knowingly. William looked at Maya first, then at Evelyn. "There is something I would like to share." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "We are listening." William opened the folder. Inside was a proposal several months in the making. Partnerships with schools, community volunteers, safe walking routes, mentorship opportunities, funding for after-school programs. A citywide initiative built around 4 simple words. No child stands alone. "This will launch next spring," William said quietly. "And it exists because an 8-year-old girl reminded me that attention is one of the greatest gifts a person can give." Maya stared at the pages. "Because of me?" William shook his head gently. "Because of what you taught me." For a moment, nobody spoke. The library buzzed softly around them. Cameras flashed in the distance. Sunlight poured through tall windows. Then Maya reached into her pocket and removed the yellow bracelet. She held it out toward Noah. "I promised to keep it safe." Noah smiled. "You did." He accepted it, then surprised everyone by immediately placing it inside a small glass display box William had brought from his briefcase. A silver plaque rested beneath it. Maya leaned closer and read the engraved words. Kindness moved faster than traffic. Her eyes widened. William looked at both children. "I wanted to remember the day everything changed." Noah nodded. "Me too." Maya smiled, and for the first time she understood something important. The greatest thing she had done was not helping a boy at a crosswalk. It was helping people see each other. As the afternoon light turned golden beyond the library windows, William gently placed a hand on Noah's shoulder and looked at Maya with gratitude that words could never fully express. The city outside remained busy. Cars moved. Crowds hurried. Life continued. But somewhere within that enormous city, more people were beginning to pay attention. And because one little girl had stopped long enough to notice someone standing alone, countless others would no longer have to.